All those pieces is a memoir based on speech language pathologist, can't say that word, speech language pathologist experience working with developmentally disabled adults. In the book, the author shares the stories of a number of individuals who have been diagnosed with both developmental and mental impairments. Light is shed on the specific issues such as the people deal with every day. Stories are sometimes sad and tragic, making you cry, but at other times enormously triumphant and inspirational, causing you to both laugh and cheer. This book will leave readers with more compassionate hearts towards all. I happen to agree. I read this book, and I happen to know the speech pathologist. She happens to be a friend of mine, named Jessica Wisley. Before we get to my interview with her about her book, I wanted to do a little house cleaning and remind you that Momo is nominated for the TCK Publishing Reader's Choice Award this year. So anytime between now and I think November 20th or something like that, and you can vote for Momo for that award. And I'll leave a link with the video so you can go there directly and cast your vote for Momo. Lots of things are happening at kevinmkraft.com. I want to encourage you to visit the website often. A lot of exciting things coming up that I look forward to telling you about, but I just can't say anything yet. Keep it a surprise. But, we're going to be doing a lot of things over there, so check that out when you can. If you haven't already signed up to be kept in the loop of those things, you can do so at the bottom of any page on my website. So stay in the loop, click on that, add your information, you'll be added to the email list. Be the first to hear any news about myself and my books, releases, interviews, that kind of stuff. So thank you in advance for doing that. I love to make friends. All right, Jessica should be on in just a moment. When she is, we will resume the interview. All right, hey, Jessica is here. As I said, Jessica is a friend of mine as well as today's guest. So welcome, Jessica, to this interview and my website, podcast. I guess that's what it's called. I don't know. It's good to see you.
Okay, good to see you too. Thank you, Kevin.
All those pieces. Great book. I thank you for an advanced look at it, not before it was published, but then afterwards. And I enjoyed reading it both times. So I thank you for that.
Oh, I'm impressed. You read it twice.
I did, and I loved it both times. It's really great. A memoir. I was wondering when they say memoir or is it memoirs? I've heard it both. I heard both terms. Is it plural or singular?
I do it singular. Memoir.
Okay, that makes sense to me too.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go with memoir then. All right. Well, Jessica, tell us a little bit about your background and the basis for all those pieces.
Okay. Well, as I explained in the book, I have had various careers in my life. And when I was younger, I was active duty in the United States Air Force. That was one of my vocations. I got a degree in biology. I worked in various labs. And by the time I got to my early 30s, I wasn't feeling like I was really impacting anyone's life. And that bothered me quite a bit, to the point where I said, something has to change. So kind of major upheaval in my life in my 30s, I went back to school full time, and it took almost 4 years to get the speech pathology degree, speech language pathology, actually it is. And I came out, started working with children for 2 or 3 years, absolutely loved it. That position ended. So then I got a job at an agency working with developmentally disabled adults from the age of late teens all the way up to 80 years old. And these are the people I'm focusing on in my book.
Let's see. Yeah. You and I have very similar backgrounds as far as that kind of work. So that's why I appreciate your book so much, because I could identify with a lot of what you're
Oh, excellent, excellent.
Yeah. So is this your first publishing effort, your first book that's been published?
This is absolutely my first book. I started it March of 2015. And I was still working full time, actually, as I was writing. So it was a long process. I had it published the end of 2020. So it was almost a 6-year project.
Yeah, that's pretty involved. Wow. No, but this isn't your first time writing, is it? You've written before.
Well, yes and no. Nothing that has ever been published. I started writing little stories when I was a child, 6 or 7 years old, and I wrote till I was about 10 or 11. I wrote mystery stories. I wrote spoofs on fairy tales, that sort of thing. And then after that, I really enjoyed English class and the writing assignments that I had for those years during high school. And I've always wanted to write a book and always felt frustrated because I never knew what to write about. But after 15 years working with the developmentally disabled, I finally had enough material to write a book.
That's great. Again, very similar writing backgrounds, you and I. So that's great.
All right.
How did you begin the actual process of writing the book? When you said, okay, I'm going to write a book, how did you start?
I just started with one of the main characters. He is the character in chapter 1. His name is Charles in the book. Of course, I changed all the names to protect identities. And Charles was a pedophile. And I worked with him for 5 years, and it's how I got to know him, learn a lot about him, and I discovered that there's more than one side to the story. The idea of a pedophile, obviously that is not good and turns you off, but I found many, many good qualities about Charles, and in a way actually became close to him and bonded with him over that time. So I just said I'll just start character by character, and that's who I started with.
Did you find that, let me ask you this question. A lot of people would find working with such a population challenging, to say the least. And when you're dealing with people like sex offenders, pedophiles and stuff, did you find that personally difficult to do?
Yes, I did. I found it daunting at first. Yeah, kind of hard to explain there. Well, I think in my book I talk about how frustrating it was many times in my career, to the point where I thought, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. And I always came back. There was always something to come back for. And I started looking at it like, hey, these are God's people too, the same as me. And they're the same as me, really. And when I started looking at it that way, which I tried to explain in my book, my world just sort of transformed overnight. I stopped disliking my job. I mean, I'm not saying it became easy at that point, because there were many points it was not easy. But I went through a transformation. Yeah, I really did.
That's great. That's very admirable too. I mean, I can kind of relate to that. I had to bring myself to that point as well, where I couldn't just look at what these people did. Sometimes it was heinous things, but I really had to realize, like you said, these are God's people. God loves these people too. And as a representative of Christ, I need to be able to extend that as well, to other people. And that's what caused me, like you said, not just to do the job, but to actually love the job.
Right.
And because you're not just doing it to make a paycheck, you're doing it because you have purpose. There's a purpose to this.
Exactly.
So that's excellent. Yeah, wonderful. When it came to writing your book, what was the easiest aspect of the writing process, and what was the most challenging or the hardest?
Oh, okay. Well, the easiest aspect was that I really enjoy writing, and I like to think I'm fairly good at it.
Wow.
And I enjoyed character by character, just sitting down and, over the years compiling the stories. So that probably was the easiest. The hardest, I think, was making mundane material interesting. For example, the introduction, I had to let the reader know the background, what the setting was, and that sort of thing, which was just mundane, and trying to make it interesting, because you don't want to lose a reader that early in the book with the introduction.
Very true.
That was the most challenging part, I think, was putting that introduction together.
That's good. Did you have a certain goal in mind when it came to writing the book? Like when you're writing the book, what was your purpose in writing it, where the reader was concerned?
Well, I felt that these people had stories that should be told, and that if I didn't do it, who would? Their cases are very, very interesting. I mean, some are very, very sad. Some are enormously inspiring. Some are hilariously funny. And I just thought, I have to captivate this. I really do. The world needs to know what a developmentally disabled person's life might be like.
Yeah, I agree, and you did a great job in making it interesting. So I'm sorry. The question was, what's been the response to all those pieces?
Oh, I don't know how much you heard, but people were very surprised at what a developmentally disabled person's life might be like. It was very eye-opening, and they were also impressed with the different roles of a speech pathologist. They said, I never knew a speech therapist did all those things. So I think the book was enlightening in more than one way.
It's great. It's great. Did you personally benefit from writing and releasing your book? What did you get out of it personally?
I just realized how the affinity I feel for these individuals still to this very day. I'm not with this agency anymore. I miss them a great deal, and I often think, oh, I would just love to see these people. I really love them. I think that's what I got out of it, and just the satisfaction that I was able to actually put a book together. I mean, it's not the longest book in the world, but it's a book.
Yeah.
And that I was able to come up with enough material. I was still getting material to the very end, right before it was published, getting new material. So I was just proud that I was able to put it together.
That's great. One question that comes to mind, you mentioned that, is let's speak personally for me first. Until I actually got into the work where I was working with the mentally ill and the mentally disabled and stuff, I didn't think I even had anything to offer them. I never considered, doing that kind of work at all.
Right.
What was that? What was the decision to do this kind of work for you? Like when did it dawn on you that this is what I want to do?
Well, we'd have to go back. I needed a job. I'll be honest. I needed a job. And I was told it's a very difficult place to work. And I sort of took that as neither here nor there. I explained that in the book. I was willing to give it a try. It was somewhat daunting when I heard the word sex offender. That was really daunting. I don't think it's exactly how I had pictured it. For instance, I mean, this is not back alley rapists we're talking about. This is different. And I just did not know at the time that all these individuals had their own special story. And then there was a point where I started feeling like this job is really fitting me like a glove. I mean, there's a reason I was with the people that I was for so long. There is a reason I was there. And that really makes me happy.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
You're a speech pathologist, so you don't work with do you work with nonverbal people or people that can't speak at all?
Yes. I don't know that any nonverbal individuals are in my book. Now, clinicians are different. Some prefer working with nonverbal individuals. I prefer working with the higher functioning individuals that are verbal. It's just easier for me. So those characters tend to be in my book.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was doing this kind of work, I actually had an affinity for working with those that were nonverbal. It's like I can almost read their minds and understand what they wanted. They'd give me all the most difficult people because I could somehow work with them, easier than anybody else. So that was interesting. Yeah, but I can understand, how working with a nonverbal person can be very difficult as a speech pathologist. I mean, you're a speech pathologist, right? That means
right.
That makes a lot of sense.
There's sign language. I mean, there's other forms of communication.
Mm-hmm. Are you well versed in that as well?
I'm not fluent, but I do know some sign. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm. And I bring that out in the book. There's some of the characters in my book that knew sign language.
Right, right. Very good. Very good. Do you have any other projects you're working on? This is a great book. Do you have any follow-ups to it?
Well, I don't think a sequel will happen. I don't know that there's time in life to get enough material for another book, for one thing. I have ideas about writing a novel about a woman's life, possibly loosely based on my life. So I have some ideas. They're in the embryonic stage right now, but yes, I would love to write another book.
Oh, that's great. That's great. But where can people find out more about you and all those pieces?
Well, I have a website. It's www.allthosepieces.com. My book is for sale on Amazon as a paperback and as an ebook. And I have also done my own audiobook, which I am very proud of.
That is great.
Yeah, I didn't hire somebody to do it. I actually did the reading, and it was just really, really rewarding. So that's for sale on Audible.
Excellent. Yeah, I did listen to that. You have a great voice for audio. You really do. I mean, you have always had a great voice anyway, but yeah, it was a treat listening to that.
Thanks.
Is there a passage you could read for us from your book?
Sure. Well, I'll read you the prologue, which I think gets the reader's attention.
Excellent.
Strolling into the large classroom to retrieve one of my students, I glimpsed her out of the corner of my eye. Immediately, I knew something bad was coming. She was still seated, but bore a look of sheer animal rage. As she jumped up and leapt toward me, I had just enough time to lift my right arm to shield my face, as I had been taught to do. She clamped down so fiercely on my forearm that she and I essentially became one. Her teeth cut into me as she threw me up against a desk. Time seems to freeze in such moments. I remember falling back on the desk, completely unable to move. The next thing I remember is feeling a release as a large woman pulled her off of me. I was left half dazed. Her teeth had left their imprint on my arm, and I was bleeding. That's the prologue.
That really jumped out at me. That was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was a pretty hair-raising prologue too. So.
Yes, it was. The risk of the job, being attacked.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any scars from that?
Oh, I had a scar in my arm for a few years, yes.
Oh man. Something, and that happened, did that happen pretty early on in your?
About 2 years into it. It was not one of my students that I serviced. It was not a male, it was a woman.
I remember that, yeah.
I had just walked into a classroom to pick up one of my students, and then I saw her, and I knew the bad was coming. That rage in her eyes, jumped up at me. So it was about 2 years in.
I remember, that was it. I mean, and I think you finished the story in the book, so as far as what happens to that.
Yes.
So thank goodness. And that was great because it made you want to read about what happened in the end, and you end up reading the whole thing. So that's great.
I know.
That was excellently written, I got to say. So,
all
right. Well, listen, I really enjoyed talking to you about all those pieces, and I'm going to definitely encourage other people to read it. I'm going to push it all I can on my website and in my social media, and recommend it to all my viewers now. Go get All Those Pieces by Jessica Wisley. You'll find it very interesting, and you won't be sorry you read it. And then it will be an education for you as well. So Jessica, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me about your book. And look forward to your next eventual project.
All right.
All right. Everybody else, remember, kevinmcraft.com is where you can find everything about me, including these interviews that I do with some great authors. All right. So check it out, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.